7:10 in the morning, the Gulf of Oman. The guided missile destroyer USS Carney was already cutting through the heavy swells at 32 knots. This was not a routine monitoring mission. Naval intelligence had confirmed that the merchant vessel Sahar was carrying more than the industrial chemicals listed on its manifest. Deep inside its hull sat silver canisters containing prohibited centrifuge components destined for a restricted port. The question hanging over the bridge of the Carney was whether the Iranian Navy would let them intervene or if they would fight to protect the cargo. The air was thick with salt and 80% humidity. To the north, the rugged mountains of the Iranian coastline were shrouded in a pale yellow dust. The water below the bow was a dark, bruised purple as the sun struggled to climb through the haze. The tactical action officer stood in the darkened combat information center. He watched a single green icon on the primary display. It was the Sahar. It was moving at 12 knots on a direct heading toward the Strait of Hormuz. The officer spoke into his headset. Bridge. Combat. I have multiple new surface contacts breaking away from the Iranian coast. The captain responded from the bridge. Identify and give me a bearing. The officer adjusted the range on his screen. 6 signatures. They are Alvin-class frigates. They are moving at 28 knots, bearing 010. They are on a direct intercept course for our current position, 7:30 in the morning. The presence of 6 frigates changed the math of the encounter. Normally, the Iranian Navy sent fast attack craft or a single corvette to shadow American ships. Deploying 6 frigates was a massive show of force. It suggested that the cargo on the Sahar was as valuable as the intelligence reports claimed. 500 miles away, analysts at the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain watched the same digital icons. The situation was moving from a maritime law enforcement action to a strategic confrontation. On the bridge of the Carney, the captain looked through his binoculars. He could just see the lead Iranian ship, the Alborz, emerging from the heat haze. It was a smaller ship compared to the American destroyer, but its deck guns were uncovered. The captain turned to his communications officer. Hail the Sahar again. Use the International Maritime Distress Frequency. The officer keyed the radio. Merchant vessel Sahar. This is USS Carney. You are directed to alter course to the south for a safety inspection. Acknowledge. There was only static on the speaker. The Sahar did not turn. It did not slow down. 7:45 in the morning. Inside the bridge of the Iranian frigate Alborz, the atmosphere was equally tense. The Iranian commander stood by the glass, watching the gray silhouette of the American destroyer grow larger. He knew the Carney carried enough firepower to sink his entire flotilla, but his orders were absolute. The Sahar must reach its destination. The commander turned to his radio operator. Signal the American ship. Tell them the Sahar is under sovereign escort. Tell them any interference will be considered an act of aggression. The radio operator sent the message in clear English. On the Carney, the message was received and recorded. The two forces were now less than 10 miles apart. The Sahar sat between them, a slow-moving prize in a high-speed game of naval chess. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 7:50 in the morning. The radar screen in the Combat Information Center was a crowded map of overlapping circles. The green icon of the USS Carney was now surrounded by 6 distinct amber blips. The Iranian frigates were not just following, they were maneuvering. 2 ships moved to the port side of the Sahar. 2 moved to the starboard side. The remaining 2 trailed closely behind. They had formed a protective corridor around the merchant vessel. Lieutenant Commander Miller, the tactical action officer, watched the vectors. They are tightening the formation. Range to the nearest escort is 4,000 yards. The captain's voice came over the internal circuit from the bridge. They are trying to screen our sensor look at the Sahar. They want to make it impossible for us to send a boarding team without passing through their line. Understood, Miller replied. Sir, I am detecting increased electronic activity from the Alborz. They are searching for our fire control frequencies. This was the first anomaly. Usually, a shadow mission involved passive monitoring. Actively searching for fire control frequencies was a precursor to a weapons lock. It was a provocative, high-stakes move. 8:10 in the morning. On the Sahar, the bridge was a scene of forced calm. The captain of the merchant vessel was a civilian, but he was not in charge. Two men in dark, non-military coveralls stood behind him. They were the ones who had ordered the radio to be silenced. They were the ones who ensured the ship stayed its course at exactly 12 knots. One of the men looked at the USS Carney through a set of high-powered lenses. The American is staying close. He is waiting for his partner. The second one is 30 miles out, the other man said. He checked a ruggedized tablet. We must reach the territorial waters of the strait before the second destroyer arrives. Tell the Alborz to increase the pressure. A signal was sent via a secure, short-range burst. On the Alborz, the Iranian commander received the order. He looked at the Carney, a massive wall of steel and high-end sensors. He knew the risks. The commander turned to his helmsman. Come to port 5 degrees. Close the gap with the American ship. If he wants to see the Sahar, he will have to look through our hull. 8:30 in the morning. The Carney felt the shift immediately. The Alborz was now less than 2,000 yards away and closing. This was dangerous proximity for two warships moving at high speed. On the bridge, the Carney's crew could see the individual sailors on the Iranian deck. They were not wearing life jackets. They were manned at their crew-served weapons. The captain of the Carney picked up the bridge-to-bridge radio. His voice was flat and professional. Iranian warship, 7-2. This is USS Carney. You are standing into danger. Your current course is unsafe and interferes with our freedom of navigation. Alter course immediately. The response was instantaneous. American warship. This is Iranian Navy ship Alborz. We are conducting a sovereign escort of a national interest vessel. It is you who are interfering. You will maintain a distance of 5 nautical miles or face the consequences of your provocation. The Iranian ship did not turn away. It edged closer. Suddenly, a new alarm chirped in the Carney's Combat Information Center. It was not a surface contact. It was an airborne signature. Bridge. Combat. New contact, Miller called out. I have a high-speed profile coming off the coast. Speed. Mach 0.9, bearing 350. It is a drone, and it is heading directly for us. The standoff was no longer just on the water. 8:35 in the morning. The radar technician on the USS Carney adjusted his headset. The contact was closing fast. Bridge. Combat. The unmanned aerial vehicle is at 12 miles. It is a Mohajer 6. It is carrying 2 precision-guided munitions. The captain stood at the starboard bridge wing. He did not look at the drone. He looked at the horizon to the south. A gray shape was rising out of the water. It was the USS Winston Churchill. It was a massive reinforcement. The second Arleigh Burke-class destroyer was arriving at 30 knots. 2 American destroyers now faced 6 Iranian frigates. The odds were still, numerically, in favor of the Iranians, but the firepower of the American ships was vastly superior. The captain spoke into the internal net. Combat. Bridge. Do not illuminate the drone with fire control radar. Keep the phalanx systems in auto-track, but do not engage unless it crosses the 500-meter perimeter. The Churchill checked in over the secure tactical net. Carney. Churchill. We are on station. We are taking the rearguard position on the Sahar. We have eyes on the 6 escorts. 9 in the morning. The Iranian commander on the Alborz watched the second American destroyer arrive. He saw the Churchill maneuver with surgical precision. It moved to block the 2 Iranian frigates trailing the merchant vessel. The Iranian formation was now squeezed. The Americans were creating a box around the Sahar and its escort. The commander on the Alborz picked up the radio. He spoke with a cold, measured tone. American warships. This is the Iranian Navy. You are now operating in a restricted military zone. Your presence is an escalation. If your aircraft or ships approach the Sahar within 1,000 meters, we will take defensive measures. This is your final warning. On the bridge of the Carney, the captain listened to the message. He looked at his executive officer. They are trying to draw a line in the water. If we cross it, they claim self-defense. If we stay back, the Sahar reaches the strait. Sir, The executive officer said. The Sahar is increasing speed, 13 knots. They are pushing the engines, 9:15 in the morning. The communication link to the 5th Fleet Command in Bahrain was crystal clear. The admiral's voice was steady but firm. He was speaking from a room filled with screens showing satellite imagery and real-time data. The admiral spoke. Carney, this is 5th Fleet. Your mission remains unchanged. You are to prevent the Sahar from entering the Strait of Hormuz. You are authorized to use non-kinetic maneuvers to block its path. You are not authorized to fire the first shot. However, if any Iranian vessel demonstrates hostile intent or commits a hostile act, you are cleared to defend your units with all necessary force. The captain of the Carney acknowledged. Copy, 5th Fleet. We will shoulder the formation. We are moving to the next phase of the intercept. The rules of engagement were now set. The Americans could block, but they could not shoot. The Iranians could escort, but they could not attack without starting a war. It was a test of nerves and seamanship. The Carney began to turn. It was no longer sailing parallel to the Iranian line. It was heading directly for the gap between the Alborz and the Sahar. The metal of the ships creaked as they pushed through the rising waves. The space between the hulls was shrinking. The standoff was entering its second hour. The heat was rising. 9:20 in the morning. The USS Carney began its move. The massive destroyer leaned into a hard turn, its bow slicing through the wake of the Iranian frigate Alborz. The goal was to place 8,000 tons of American steel directly between the Iranian escort and the merchant vessel Sahar. This was the shoulder maneuver. It was a high-stakes game of chicken, where the winner was the captain with the steadier hand. On the bridge of the Carney, the helmsman gripped the wheel. His knuckles were white. Bridge. Helm. Coming to course 180. Distance to the Alborz is 400 meters and closing. The captain stood at the center of the bridge. He watched the Iranian frigate through the windows, steady as she goes. Hold the line. If he wants to hit us, let him be the one to turn into our hull. The gap between the two warships vanished. 300 meters, 200. The turbulence from the Alborz's wake began to pull at the Carney's bow. This was the Venturi effect, a physical force that threatened to suck the two ships together. The sea between the hulls was a churning mass of white foam and green water. 10 o'clock in the morning, the Iranian commander on the Alborz saw the American destroyer looming over his starboard side like a gray cliff. He could see the individual tiles of the Carney's radar arrays. He knew that if the ships touched at this speed, the impact would be catastrophic. He gave a sharp command. Increase speed to 30 knots. Do not let him cross our bow. Signal the Sahar to turn 5 degrees to port. We will pinch him. The Iranian formation reacted. The two frigates on the starboard side of the Sahar began to veer inward. They were creating a pincer. They intended to trap the Carney between themselves and the merchant ship. If the Carney did not back down, it would be crushed in a three-way collision. Across the water, the USS Winston Churchill saw the maneuver. The Churchill's captain acted immediately. All engines ahead flank. We are moving to support the Carney. Block the second Iranian escort. Do not let them complete the pincer. The second American destroyer surged forward. It cut across the path of the trailing Iranian ships, forcing them to break formation or collide with the Churchill. The ocean was now a chaotic grid of intersecting wakes. 4 warships were maneuvering at high speed within a space of less than 2 miles. 10:20 in the morning, the physical signaling began. The Carney turned on its high-intensity searchlights, aiming them directly at the bridge of the Alborz. The light was blinding, a silent scream across the water. Simultaneously, the long-range acoustic device, a sonic cannon, began to emit a deafening, pulsed tone. It was a physical wall of sound designed to disrupt the Iranian bridge crew. The Iranian crew responded by uncovering their heavy machine guns. Sailors in life vests scrambled to the side rails, pointing their weapons at the Carney's bridge. No one fired, but the safety catches were off. On the Carney, the chief of the watch spoke over the internal circuit. Condition 1 remains in effect. Security teams to the weather decks. Non-lethal posture only. Do not raise weapons unless ordered. 10:40 in the morning. The standoff had reached a stalemate of pure physics. The Carney was successfully shouldering the Alborz away from the Sahar, but the Iranian ship refused to yield more than a few meters. The Sahar was now less than 50 miles from the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz. The heat was oppressive. The sun was directly overhead, turning the steel decks of the ships into furnaces. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air conditioning struggled to keep the electronics cool. The tactical action officer looked at the screen. "Sir, the Sahar is ignoring our maneuvers. They are holding their heading. At this rate, they will enter the shipping lane in 90 minutes. The captain of the Carney wiped sweat from his brow. "They think we will stop at the line. They think we won't follow them into the strait." He looked at the Alborz, still only 200 meters away. The Iranian commander was staring back at him through binoculars. Both men knew the next hour would decide if this ended in a boarding or a battle. 10:45 in the morning. The hangar doors of the USS Carney slid open. Despite the pitching deck and the proximity of the Iranian frigates, the flight crew moved with practice speed. The MH-60R Seahawk helicopter, call sign Easy Rider 11, began its startup sequence. Its rotors blurred into a gray disk, biting into the humid air. Within minutes, the aircraft lifted off the deck, banking hard to the east to gain altitude. From the cockpit, the pilot looked down at the scene. It looked like a formation of toy ships carved into a sheet of blue glass, trailing long white plumes of foam. Bridge. Easy Rider 11. We have a clear visual on the Sahar and all 6 escorts. The Alborz is maintaining its position, less than 200 meters from our starboard quarter. The helicopter provided more than just a camera in the sky. It carried a suite of electronic warfare sensors and dipping sonar. Most importantly, it carried Hellfire missiles. Its presence was a clear signal. The United States was no longer just watching from the surface. 11 in the morning. The Iranian commander on the Alborz watched the Seahawk hover 2,000 feet above his ship. He saw the door gunner manning a .30 caliber machine gun. He knew the helicopter was recording every move his crew made. He turned to his weapons officer. "Activate the infrared tracking system for the shoulder-launched missiles. Do not lock on, but let them see the seeker heads moving. If that aircraft crosses the vertical perimeter of the Sahar, it is to be considered a hostile actor." 2 Iranian sailors moved to the bridge wing. They hoisted a Russian-made Igla missile system. They did not point it at the helicopter, but they stood in plain sight. The electronic warfare suite on the Carney immediately chirped a warning. The environment was becoming saturated with sensor energy. Every radar, every laser rangefinder, and every radio frequency was being monitored and countered. 11:15 in the morning. A new voice crackled over the international maritime hailing frequency. It was crisp, calm, and carried a distinct British accent. Iranian naval vessels in the Gulf of Oman. This is the Royal Navy destroyer, HMS Duncan. We are 3.5 miles to your south and closing at 31 knots. We are joining the American units in support of maritime security operations. You are advised to cease your aggressive maneuvering against the USS Carney and the USS Winston Churchill. The Duncan was a Type 45 destroyer, one of the most advanced air defense ships in the world. Its presence shifted the tactical balance significantly. The Iranian commander now faced 3 Western destroyers. His 6 frigates were smaller and older. In a full-scale engagement, the outcome would be decided in minutes. 11:30 in the morning. The Sahar was now approaching the invisible line that marked the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz. The shipping lanes here were narrow. If the merchant vessel reached the lane, any attempt to stop it would disrupt the flow of global oil tankers. It would create a maritime traffic jam that could spark an international crisis. On the bridge of the Carney, the captain looked at the navigation chart. The Sahar is not slowing. They are ignoring the Duncan. They are ignoring the Churchill. They are betting that we won't risk a collision in a congested waterway. The tactical action officer checked his screen. "Sir, The Sahar is altering course. They are turning toward the rocky shallows of the Musandam Peninsula. They are trying to lure us into water that is too shallow. For our draft, the Iranian frigates moved in unison, shifting their formation to block the Carney from following the Sahar into the shallower water. The pincer was closing again. This time, there was no room to maneuver. The ships were running out of ocean. The captain gripped the rail. All hands to battle stations. This is no longer a shadow mission. We are going to the gate. The morning was ending. The time for maneuvering was over. 11:31 in the morning. The USS Carney surged forward. All 4 gas turbine engines roared. The vibration traveled through the deck plates and into the boots of every sailor. The distance to the Iranian frigate Alborz dropped to 80 meters, then 70. The sea between the 2 hulls was a white canyon of pressurized water. The captain's voice was a low growl. Hold your course. Do not blink. 11:31 and 30 seconds. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air was cold. The lights were low. Suddenly, a high-pitched warble tore through the room. It was the electronic warfare suite. Bridge. Combat. We have a fire control radar lock. The Alborz has illuminated our bridge with its targeting system. The tactical action officer did not wait for orders. Match them. Lock all forward missile cells. Bring the 5-inch gun to bear on their waterline. 11:32 in the morning. On the Iranian bridge, the commander felt the shift. His sensors screamed as the American destroyer locked its teeth onto his ship. Every defensive system on the Carney was now slaved to a single trigger. The Iranian commander looked at his weapons officer. The American is not turning. He is coming through us. Sir, the officer replied. The Sahar is initiating a hard turn to port. 11:32 and 30 seconds. The merchant vessel Sahar was no longer just a cargo ship. It was a weapon. It swung its massive bow toward the Carney. The heavy steel hull moved with the slow, unstoppable momentum of 40,000 tons. It was a ramming maneuver. If the Carney did not reverse engines, the Sahar would strike the destroyer amidships. 11:33 in the morning. Bridge. Combat. The Sahar is closing. Range 300 meters. 200. Impact in 15 seconds. The captain of the Carney gripped the edge of the command chair. Emergency back full. All engines. Now. The destroyer shuddered. As the propellers reversed direction, the ship groaned. The bow lifted as the water fought against the sudden change in force. The Carney slowed, but the Sahar kept coming. 11:33 and 30 seconds. The HMS Duncan called out over the tactical net. Carney. Duncan. I have multiple missile signatures on the Iranian coast. Silkworm batteries are active. They are tracking the Churchill and the Duncan. The escalation was vertical. It was no longer a local standoff. The entire coastal defense network of the region was going hot. 11:34 in the morning. Inside the Carney, the screen was a mess of red symbols. The drone overhead was diving. The Iranian frigates were breaking into 3 pairs, flanking the American ships. Every sailor on the weather decks was crouched behind armor. The tactical action officer looked at the captain. His hand was hovering over the master arm switch. Sir, we are being targeted by shore batteries and 3 surface ships. Request permission to engage. The captain looked through the glass. The Sahar's bow was 50 meters away. It looked like a mountain of red iron. Wait, the captain said. His voice was a whisper. 11:34 and 30 seconds. The Sahar was so close, its shadow fell. Across the Carney's deck, the Iranian frigates had their deck guns trained on the bridge. The drone was directly above the radar mast. One shot would start a war that would consume the entire Gulf. The finger stayed off the trigger. The world seemed to stop. 11:35 in the morning. The air was filled with the smell of diesel and the sound of screaming turbines. 11:36 in the morning. The collision seemed inevitable. The massive red wall of the Sahar's bow was less than 30 meters from the USS Carney. Sailors on the destroyer's bridge braced for the impact that would tear through the thin skin of their ship. Then, a massive geyser of black soot and white steam erupted from the Sahar's funnel. A deep, grinding roar echoed across the water. It was the sound of metal screaming against metal. The merchant vessel shuddered violently from stem to stern. Its forward momentum did not stop, but its steering failed completely. The Sahar's bow swung wildly to starboard, missing the Carney's stern by less than 10 meters. The turbulence of its passage rocked the destroyer so hard that equipment flew off the consoles in the Combat Information Center. Bridge. Combat. The Sahar is losing speed, the tactical action officer shouted. They have had a catastrophic engine failure. Their screws have stopped turning. 11:40 in the morning. The scene was one of frozen chaos. The Sahar was drifting, a dead weight in the middle of a war zone. The Iranian frigates, which had been in a tight pincer formation, had to break away at high speed to avoid slamming into their own charge. The Alborz turned so sharply that its deck was nearly awash. Suddenly, a new signal overrode every tactical frequency. It was a broadcast originating from the Omani Coast Guard. All naval units in the Gulf of Oman, this is the Sultanate of Oman. We are operating within our maritime search and rescue region. We have received a distress signal from the Sahar. We are declaring a 5-mile exclusion zone around the disabled vessel. All foreign warships are directed to increase their distance to 3,000 yards immediately. The message was repeated in English, Persian, and Arabic. It was a diplomatic lifeline. The Omani government, which maintained neutral relations with both the United States and Iran, was asserting its authority over the Dunt physical space. 11:50 in the morning. On the bridge of the Alborz, the Iranian commander stood in silence. His hands were clenched behind his back. The mission had changed. He could no longer claim he was escorting a vessel in transit. He was now guarding a shipwreck. His radio operator turned to him. "Sir, we have a direct transmission from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tehran. It is a secure channel. They are speaking with the American State Department through the Omani intermediaries." The FOT commander looked at the Carney, which was now backing away to the new exclusion limit. "Tell the crew to stand down from the guns, but keep the missiles hot. We are not leaving this ship." 12 o'clock, noon. The USS Carney, the USS Winston Churchill, and the HMS Duncan formed a wide semicircle to the south of the Sahar. The 6 Iranian frigates formed a matching arc to the north. In the center sat the silent, smoking merchant vessel. The drone that had been diving pulled up into a high-altitude hover. The shore batteries on the Iranian coast remained active, but ceased their active tracking. The immediate fever of the crisis had broken, replaced by a cold, heavy tension. Inside the Carney, the captain sat in his chair for the first time in 4 hours. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee. "So, we have a siege." "Yes, sir," the executive officer replied. "The Omanis are sending a tug and a medical team. They are insisting on boarding the Sahar to assess the damage." "And the cargo?" the captain asked. "The Iranians are refusing to let anyone on board," the officer said. "They claim sovereign immunity because of the escort. The Omanis are telling them that a dead ship is a navigational hazard, not a sovereign vessel." 12:15 in the afternoon. The sun beat down. On the silent flotilla, the water was unnaturally calm. To any observer from a distance, it looked like a peaceful gathering of ships. But every radar was scanning. Every sonar was listening. The standoff had transitioned from a high-speed chase to a stationary test of will. 31 hours remained in the encounter. The Sahar was not moving, and neither was anyone else. The afternoon was just beginning. The real battle was now happening in offices thousands of miles away. 12:20 in the afternoon. The Omani patrol boat, Musandam, arrived on the scene. It was much smaller than the destroyers and frigates surrounding it. It moved with a slow, deliberate pace, positioning itself directly between the USS Carney and the Iranian frigate Alborz. This was a physical buffer. The Omani captain spoke over the open channel. The captain of the Musandam spoke. "Attention all vessels. We are deploying a boarding party to the Sahar to provide humanitarian and technical assistance. Any vessel that interferes with our small boat will be in violation of Omani territorial sovereignty. On the bridge of the Carney, the captain watched through his long-range optics. He saw a rigid hull inflatable boat drop from the side of the Musandam. It carried 4 men in orange vests. They were not carrying rifles. They were carrying toolkits and medical bags. The tactical action officer checked his sensor suite. "Sir, the Iranian frigates are not moving to block the Omani boat. They are letting them through." The captain nodded. "They have to. If they stop the Omanis, they lose their only diplomatic shield. They are betting that the Omanis won't find the cargo, or that they won't report it if they do." 3:30 in the afternoon. The heat had become a physical weight. On the deck of the Carney, the steel was hot enough to melt the rubber soles of boots. The crew had been at battle stations for over 8 hours. In the Combat Information Center, the air was stale. The hum of the cooling fans for the Aegis radar system was a constant, low-frequency drone that vibrated in the teeth of the operators. Inside the Iranian frigate Alborz, the conditions were worse. Their ventilation systems were struggling against the extreme Gulf humidity. The Iranian commander stood at his post, his shirt soaked with sweat. He watched the Omani boarding team climb the pilot ladder. Of the Sahar, the Iranian commander spoke to his executive officer. "If the Omanis try to open the sealed containers in hold number 3, we will receive a signal from our men on the Sahar. If that happens, we will board the ship ourselves." Regardless of what the Sultanate says, the executive officer looked at the 3 Western destroyers. "And if the Americans move to stop us?" The commander did not blink. "Then we will see who is more willing to die for a box of silver tubes." 5 o'clock in the evening. The Omani team remained on the Sahar for nearly 2 hours. When they returned to the Musandam, they did not release a public report. Instead, a series of encrypted burst transmissions were sent from the patrol boat to Muscat. From there, the information flowed to Washington and Tehran. The Omani boat signaled the fleet. The Sahar has suffered a major failure of its main drive shaft. It cannot move under its own power. A heavy-duty tug is en route from the port of Kasab. It will arrive by nightfall. The USS Winston Churchill moved to a new station, 5 miles to the west. It was positioning itself to intercept any other Iranian vessels that might try to join the flotilla under the cover of darkness. The HMS Duncan remained tucked in behind the Carney, its powerful radar arrays scanning the skies for more drones. 6 in the evening, the sun began to dip toward the horizon, turning the Gulf of Oman into a sheet of hammered gold. The long shadows of the warships stretched across the water like fingers. The transition to night operations began. On the Carney, the bridge crew switched to low-level red lighting. The tactical action officer watched as the amber blips of the Iranian frigates changed to infrared signatures on his secondary screen. The captain of the Carney spoke into the internal net. "Night orders are in effect. Maintain a 1,000-yard buffer from the exclusion zone. Keep the searchlights ready. If the Iranians try to put more men on that merchant vessel tonight, I want to know the second their boots hit the deck." The shadow of the mountains fell over the water. The Sahar sat silent and dark. Its navigation lights flickered once, then died. It was a black silhouette against a darkening sea. The standoff had reached its 18th hour. Both sides were exhausted. Both sides were watching. The night was coming. It would be a long watch. 6 in the morning. The following day, the first light of dawn touched the masts of the silent flotilla. It had been 31 hours since the USS Carney first intercepted the merchant vessel Sahar. The gray paint of the warships looked dull and salt-streaked in the early light. On the bridge of the Carney, the morning watch stood in a silence born of pure exhaustion. Every sailor was fueled by black coffee and the high-voltage adrenaline of a standoff that refused to break. The tactical action officer looked at the primary display. The icons had not moved for 6 hours. Bridge. Combat. The Omani tug Majan is 2 miles out. They are requesting permission to enter the exclusion zone to begin towing operations. The captain leaned forward. His eyes were bloodshot. "Has the Sahar acknowledged?" "Negative, sir." Still radio silent. "But the Alborz just signaled the tug. They are allowing them to approach." 6:15 in the morning. The diplomatic cables had been moving between Muscat, Washington, and Tehran for the entire night. The mechanical failure of the Sahar had stripped away the Iranian narrative of a routine voyage. A dead ship in a vital shipping lane was a liability that even the most aggressive commander could not ignore. The Omani government had issued an ultimatum. Either the ship would be towed to a neutral port for inspection, or it would be declared a derelict and seized. Inside the Sahar, the two men in dark coveralls stood in the engine room. They looked at the shattered drive shaft. It was beyond repair. One of them spoke into a satellite phone. He listened for a full minute, his face expressionless. The man closed the phone. He looked at the ship's captain. Allow the Omani tug to secure the lines. We are going to the port of Salalah. Tell the crew to stay away from the cargo holds. If any Omani official tries to break a seal, we will scuttle the ship. 6:45 in the morning. The USS Carney watched as the heavy lines were passed from the tug to the merchant vessel. It was a slow, delicate process. The Iranian frigate, Alborz, moved closer. Its bow pointed toward the tug, as if to remind the Omanis who was still in control. The 6 Iranian frigates began to turn in unison. They were not approaching the Carney. They were moving away. Bridge. Combat. The Iranian group is breaking formation, the tactical action officer reported. They are retreating to a distance of 10 nautical miles. They are maintaining a screen around the tow, but they are giving us space. The captain of the Carney let out a long, slow breath. They are de-escalating. They've realized they can't protect the cargo and the ship simultaneously while it's being towed by a neutral party. 7 o'clock in the morning. The USS Winston Churchill and the HMS Duncan also adjusted their positions. The tight box that had enclosed the Sahar for over a day began to expand. The immediate threat of a collision or a missile exchange evaporated into the morning heat. The tension remained, but the trigger was no longer under anyone's finger. The Carney followed the tow at a respectful distance of 5,000 yards. The Iranian frigates hovered on the northern horizon, 6 dark shapes against the hazy coastline. They were like wolves watching a kill being dragged away by a larger predator. The captain turned to his executive officer. "We did it! We stopped them from reaching the strait." The executive officer looked at the Sahar. "We stopped the ship, sir, but we still don't know exactly what is inside those canisters. And the Omanis might not be as transparent as we hope." The captain nodded. "The tactical phase is over. Now the intelligence phase begins. Tell the crew to go to a modified alert status. Get half of them some sleep. They earned it." The 31 hours of brinkmanship were over. The ocean returned to its natural rhythm of waves and wind. But the materials inside the Sahar were still a secret, and the Iranian Navy was still watching from the edge of the horizon. 3 days later, the port of Salalah, Oman. The humidity of the open sea had been replaced by the dry, stagnant air of a high-security warehouse. Under the watchful eyes of Omani customs officials and international monitors, the seals on the silver canisters from the Sahar were finally broken. The contents were not industrial chemicals. They were 600 high-grade carbon fiber centrifuge rotors, precision-engineered for uranium enrichment. These were the banned materials the USS Carney had been sent to intercept. Had they reached their destination, they would have significantly accelerated a restricted nuclear program. Inside the Pentagon, a room full of senior officers watched a playback of the encounter. The satellite footage showed the USS Carney and the Alborz dancing a lethal ballet, their hulls separated by less than the length of a city bus. The analysis was clear. The mission was a tactical success, but it was also a warning. The Iranian Navy had demonstrated a level of coordination and willingness to take risks that surpassed previous intelligence estimates. The Iranian commander of the Alborz returned to the naval base at Bandar Abbas. He was not court-martialed. He was debriefed by his admirals for 14 hours. From their perspective, the mission was a display of national resolve. They had stood toe-to-toe with the most advanced destroyers in the world and had not fired a shot. In the internal logic of the Iranian military, they had proven that the United States could no longer operate in the Gulf without facing a massive, organized response. Experts would later agree that the mechanical failure of the Sahar was the only thing that prevented a kinetic engagement. If the drive shaft had not shattered, the Carney would have been forced to either let the ship pass or physically disable it. Both options carried the risk of an immediate regional war. The failure of a single piece of steel had provided a diplomatic exit ramp that neither side was willing to build for themselves. The USS Carney was now 500 miles away, refueling in the deep blue waters of the Arabian Sea. The crew was back to a standard watch rotation. The adrenaline of the 31-hour standoff had faded, replaced by the quiet, repetitive work of a long deployment. On the bridge, the captain looked out at the horizon. He knew that the silver canisters were being cataloged and neutralized. He also knew that somewhere in a shipyard in Iran, another merchant vessel was being prepared for another run. Strategic assessment. The standoff in the Gulf of Oman was a reminder that modern naval power is measured not just in the weight of a broadside, but in the precision of a maneuver. It is a game of millimeters where a single mistake can change the course of history. The USS Carney and its crew had held the line. They had navigated the narrow space between duty and disaster. The Strait of Hormuz remained open. The tankers continued to flow, carrying the lifeblood of the global economy through a corridor that is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. It is a fragile peace, maintained by young men and women on gray ships who watch each other through binoculars and radar screens. They understand a truth that the rest of the world often forgets. In the shadow of the mountains, the difference between a routine patrol and a global crisis is often nothing more than a few meters of salt water and a decision not to fire. The Gulf was quiet again, but the silence was the kind that precedes a storm.